All right, so welcome everyone to Van City Health. Today we have Nikol Grishin, a recent graduate from UBC with a Bachelor's of Kinesiology, specializing in health science, who had quite a remarkable undergraduate career. She has an extensive volunteer history, such as being a project manager for Special Olympics BC, a physiotherapy assistant, and a research assistant at the UBC Cognitive and Motor Learning Lab and at Vancouver Coastal Health. She was also this past year's Kinesiology Undergraduate Society, or KUS president, and is currently a lab coordinator at Fast Lab and a project assistant at BC Children's Hospital, about to begin the Master of Science in Kinesiology program at UBC this fall. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
And knowing you just graduated, like, how does it feel? You're done your undergrad during COVID. What was that like?
It's a bit of excitement and also a little bit of like an anticlimactic
Yeah,
feeling
I
because you're
bet.
like, oh, I didn't get my ceremony. But either way, I know I'm coming back to UBC, so I feel like my journey isn't really over. So
Right.
I still feel like the end hasn't come.
Yeah.
So it's a bittersweet experience,
Yeah.
but I think it's mostly been a really good time.
Gotcha. Like, did you do like celebrations on Convocation Day?
Not really. I had my family come over
Okay.
and we all just watched the ceremony together.
Gotcha.
But a few weeks prior, I had family members from both my stepdad and my mom's side come over and we celebrated all together. So that was like the bigger ceremony.
Awesome. Good to hear. So we're really going to be focusing on your journey up
Mhm.
until this point. So we're going to go back to some of your volunteer experiences, starting with your work at Special Olympics BC. So how did you get involved with them?
Essentially, I took a class and that class had presenters come in and speak about different opportunities to get involved.
Yep.
And so there was someone from Special Olympics that came and spoke about what they do and what their motives are and
Right.
everything like that. And then a week after, I had a work meeting and they had someone come from CECIL, which is Center for Community Engagement and
Yeah.
Learning at UBC. And they were talking about all these really great grants that they had. And one of the grants was targeting communities that were underrepresented. And it kind of just fell hand in hand. And I was like, wow, like the two and two go
Yeah.
so well together. And so Special Olympics is an organization that works with individuals with intellectual disabilities, which in my opinion is a very underrepresented community everywhere, not just
For
here.
sure.
So once I heard about the grant, I reached out to the same individual that came out and spoke in our classroom, and I connected with her, and that's how I got involved, essentially.
Great. I know you've also been awarded the UBC Chapman and Innovations Grant. So how does one get that, or apply to it at least?
Yeah, that's a good question. I never knew how extensive grant applications were until
Yeah.
I tried to apply to one.
Gotcha.
Essentially, the process can all be done online, but it's
Okay.
the same breakdown as a normal grant application would be. There's no like requirements or anything like that besides working with a nonprofit organization that explicitly states that they are willing to work with you.
Right.
So you work with them and you put together the application and the committee reviews it and then they get back to you and let you know, I guess, who wins or who receives the grants. I don't really
Right.
know the proper saying,
Yeah.
but a lot of work goes into applying for the grant because you
Right.
have to really know the project inside and out and where
Mhm.
every like penny is essentially being spent.
Gotcha.
So yeah.
Gotcha. And you did all that by yourself. You didn't have like someone looking at the financials, someone looking at what you're doing.
No, which was like definitely a mistake because I think I stretched
Okay.
myself a little too thin, but
Gotcha.
it was a great experience.
Fantastic. So what exactly did you do for Special Olympics BC?
I put together a project that we just called UBC times SOBC, which is
Okay.
Special Olympics
Yep.
BC. And we created a project that tackled two initiatives, which was breaking down barriers for individuals with intellectual disabilities,
Right.
while also creating leadership opportunities for them. So essentially what we did is we created PE classrooms in elementary age like classes.
Right.
And then we brought in athletes from Special Olympics BC and they led the class, and they also spoke about what Special Olympics meant to them.
Yeah.
And they also touched on the word inclusivity.
Right.
And we really spoke about that term and what it meant to be inclusive, because a lot of what individuals with intellectual disabilities experience are exclusive actions.
Right. Gotcha. And what do you think, or what can you say was the most rewarding from your time with SOBC?
I think the most rewarding thing is hearing from the students. I had students come up to me and say, I have, a sister or a brother that have an intellectual disability,
Right.
and I've never felt comfortable speaking with someone about it. And these are like 7-year-old
Right.
children. And the fact that they haven't explicitly told anyone because they feel ashamed, I think that's
Right.
a huge thing in my eyes. And being able to allow them to speak about it was a huge success, I think, in that program itself.
Gotcha. And I'm curious, one of our past guests was working with motion ball for these Special Olympics. Have you heard of that before?
Yeah, I've heard of
Is
it.
Was there any crossover?
Not for this project specifically, but
Right.
I worked with the Kin Games team,
Yeah.
and we put together a bench ball tournament with motion
Right.
ball and Special Olympics,
Gotcha.
where we had athletes come out and
Yeah.
participate as well.
Fantastic. Was that a marathon of sport or just a side
It was just like a side
event?
thing, yeah.
Okay, cool. So moving on, how did you become a private physio assistant?
The very simple answer is I saw the opening online.
Gotcha. So it was a co-op?
No, so
No.
a really cool thing about UBC Kin is that they post job and volunteer opportunities on their
Gotcha.
website. And so I saw it through there and I was like, why not get hands-on experience
sure.
with something like this?
Gotcha. And what did you do? What did you learn there?
So I worked with someone who had a traumatic brain injury.
Okay.
So they lost a lot of mobility. And so a lot of it was just essentially relearning basic motor skills.
Right.
So things like standing, moving arms and legs.
Yeah.
And so that's essentially what I would do.
Gotcha. And did that experience make you consider the physiotherapy route at all?
Truthfully, no.
Okay.
I think I always had my mind set on one thing and I
Okay.
never really swayed from it.
Gotcha. Very interesting. So what is that one thing?
I always wanted to go into medicine.
Gotcha.
So we'll see if that
We'll
happens.
see. Okay. We'll come back to that at the very a little later. But how do you become a research assistant at UBC and at Vancouver Coastal Health?
The Vancouver Coastal Health position was technically within UBC as well because it was in Detweiler Pavilion, which is a psychiatric, I guess, unit or ward, a part
Right.
of the hospital. And so I found out about that position from another position that I had already attained at UBC in the
Gotcha.
Motor Control and Learning Laboratory.
Gotcha.
And one of the professors on that project was also a supervisor on this one. And so he told me about it and I applied and one thing led to another and
Fantastic.
I got on that.
Yeah. Very interesting. So would you say that you're having those early opportunities in your undergrad career, obviously you got to network,
Mhm.
obviously very worth it for any of the younger students listening to this?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Gotcha. And as a research assistant, did you learn or get to do anything unique that you didn't expect a typical research assistant would do?
I think every position that I've held within research has been so different that it's hard
Okay.
to really answer that question.
Gotcha.
But I think it's really neat to see what the differences are in each project and what you get to do because it varies from essentially thesis to thesis.
Right.
Yeah.
So what were the projects that you were researching on? If you can talk into
Yeah, no,
about
of
them.
course. So one of the coolest projects that I got to work on was with a master's student, and she was examining the effects of being born preterm and
Yep.
the effects of that on motor development. And so it was really interesting to see kids age 4 to 6 and see how being born premature affects them. And so
Right.
we used TGMD, which is the gross motor development score table,
Cool.
to do that. And another really cool one that I did was working with a control group, but essentially it was a study that was examining the effects of exercise on schizophrenic individuals.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Do you speak to the results of that at all?
It's not published yet, but it's in the
gotcha.
process.
Noted.
Yeah.
Noted. Something to look forward to then.
Yeah.
So, after having these experiences doing research, could this make you consider a purely research-based career route?
I've definitely considered it, and I think that's a huge reason as to why I chose to do my master's, because I think you only get a little bit or a little touch of it in your undergrad, and you can
Yeah.
really get the full experience doing a master's.
100%. From the perspective of the last KUS president, would you say you have a pretty good idea of what UBC offers to support its kin students' career development in the healthcare field?
I think I do have a really good
Okay.
understanding.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're going to dive into this a little bit here. For potential early year students listening, what resources can you list off? So co-op clubs, I'll let you go on from there.
I think in terms of resources, there's definitely co-op within kin, but there are other ways to get involved in terms of finding jobs, like a
Right.
work-learn position at UBC, which is really great if students don't know about that.
Yeah.
Another great thing you mentioned was clubs. We have clubs days at UBC, especially on the very first day. There's just like a
Right.
whole lineup of them.
Yeah.
Another really great support system, I guess, is the KUS itself. And we have KPAC, which is Kin Peer Academic Coaching,
Yeah.
as well as a brand new Campus Connections program, which essentially pairs older students with first-year students and helps them with that transition. And then, of course, Kin Advising is a really great support system because they really help you with your courses and your
Right.
academics. But there are so many different resources on campus that students can turn to that I'm sure you can find something for anything.
Gotcha. Were you a part of the mentor program at all?
Yeah, so someone came up to me and wanted to run it last year, and so we
Okay.
put it forth, and it was its first year in September when I wasn't the president. So
Oh, okay. So it's relatively
yeah,
new.
it's brand new.
Okay. That's awesome though. That's you kind of got to jumpstart that. Looking back at your undergrad career in hindsight, was there anything that you wish you did during your undergrad that you think would have helped you on your career track right now?
I think personally speaking, taking a greater variety of courses. I was always very stuck on doing medicine and kind of going into the health sciences, which is still what I want to do. But
Right.
I think being able to take courses in different realms and different faculties really gives you a better understanding of what your true passions are.
Right.
And so looking back, I did 90% in kin and the other like 10% were all science classes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Interesting. So do more electives.
Yeah, exactly.
On a general high level, do you have any other tips for UBC students studying kin right now that are looking to get in the healthcare field?
I think that they should just not be afraid to reach out to professors if they see an opportunity. I think it's always scary for any student,
Yeah.
but the nice thing about kin is it's been such a great community where everyone has been so welcoming, including the
Right.
profs. So I would say don't ever hesitate. If you have a question or
For
if you
sure.
want to work with them, just reach out to them.
Gotcha. So I think that's just a very undervalued, amazing tidbit right there. I know going back, I think I started becoming just overall just more successful in getting to know people. And even in my courses, the more I talk to professors, and I think especially in your first and second year, you're nervous. Like you're in a classroom of hundreds of people. Who talks to the professor? Who actually goes to the office hours? But then you realize the people that do go to office hours, they're doing better. They're getting more connected. But now going on to what you're doing now, can you describe your two current positions at FAST Lab as a project assistant and at BC Children's as a research assistant?
Yeah, so I'm working for the Fitness, Aging, and Stress Lab right now, which
Okay.
is FAST Lab at
Yeah.
UBC. And I've been helping out with a new study that they have just launched, and I'm helping out with it. It's called the COPE trial,
Right.
so the COVID-19 pandemic exercise trial. So we're trying to see if introducing physical activity and exercise will help with the stress and well-being and health of individuals. Considering COVID has definitely left us very sedentary,
Yeah.
this is a really great project. And I'm also doing some other side projects as well.
Gotcha. Can you speak to those?
Right now, I'm just doing some literature reviews
Okay.
on essentially acute exercise, which is a term or like a topic that hasn't been studied all that often. A lot
Okay.
of research focuses on chronic exercise. So doing something with acute exercise has been really interesting to understand how limited the knowledge has been.
Right.
But it's been a really great opportunity so far. And then my children's hospital
Yeah.
opportunity has kind of been a span over like a year and a half, and
Gotcha.
I'll be doing my master's out there. So
Okay.
I've just been helping out with small things here and there, and the biggest thing that I've been working on is a return to movement guide for children who have undergone a heart transplant, because currently there's no strict guidelines as to like when you can start doing physical activity, so we're
Right.
trying to pinpoint what that
Interesting.
looks like.
And how long do these projects usually last?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I feel like they vary from like a few months to
Right.
a few years. The project that I've been working on at Children's Hospital it's been over a year, but this COPE trial, we're obviously hoping to have it finished as soon as we can.
Right.
But you never really can predict timelines with research because it depends on how interested individuals
sure.
are. So, yeah.
Seems like you're really interested, so I can't really wait to see how those projects kind of pan out. But I want to bring back, your route, and you said you wanted to go into medicine, and after talking with more people wanting to go into the medicine route, it is pretty rare for someone to go from undergrad straight to and apply to a med program.
Mhm.
I think it's becoming more common practice to get a master's before going in, or even getting two masters before applying to a program, especially like at UBC's, which is quite prestigious. So what led you to choose a Master of Science in Kinesiology program at UBC?
I think the very simple answer is I really enjoyed what I was researching, which was mostly based in physiology.
Right.
And I wasn't 100% certain that medicine was what I wanted to do, although I did apply. And I knew that I felt very comfortable in the environment that I was applying to. And
Right.
it was with really great individuals who I knew would support me.
Yeah.
So altogether, I just knew that there was no doubt in my mind that that was a program I wanted to apply to.
Gotcha. Did you apply both to this Master of Science program and med school?
Yeah, so I applied to a variety of med schools this
Okay.
year and last year. And last year I did get into one not in Canada. And so it was like a quite
Yeah.
tough decision to really
bet.
make if I wanted to stay here and finish my undergrad or
Right.
go to med school. And I'm very glad that I made the decision, but
Yeah.
it was not an easy one to make.
Wait, you could have just not finished your undergrad and start studying medicine elsewhere?
Yeah.
Interesting. I did not know you could do that. I thought you had to have had a degree.
You can do it here at UBC as well. If you,
Okay.
you don't have to finish your undergrad.
Are there certain course requirements?
You have to attain at least 90 credits, I believe. But
Okay.
other than that, it's pretty doable.
Why not choose the MKin program or the Masters of Kinesiology for just
The MKin is a great program if perhaps you're looking for a shorter timeline or
Okay.
you're not wanting to do research, because the MKin is solely based on courses.
right.
So that wasn't what I wanted to do. I did really want to focus on research, and the MSc is a thesis-based master's, which
Right.
is exactly what I wanted to do.
Right.
And so considering what my passions were, I just knew that the MSc was a better choice for me.
Gotcha. And how long is the MSc program?
The MSc is around 2 years. Obviously, it's sometimes it takes a bit longer depending on the project, but
Right.
normally it's 2.
Gotcha. For someone that didn't want to go into medicine but wanted to get their MSc, what type of jobs can you get with an MSc in kin?
I think the answer is like almost everything you set your mind out to, I feel like you could get. Obviously within reason.
Okay.
Of course, there are requirements. But some of the bigger jobs I would say are like clinical or exercise physiologists. So you can work in
Okay.
hospitals. You could always go into do your PhD. You could work as a lecturer at colleges. And the list kind of goes on. It really depends on where your interests are. I know people who have ended up working for nonprofit organizations. So sometimes your MSc or even your undergrad degree doesn't really define the work you end up doing for the
Right.
rest of your life.
Gotcha. Oh, definitely not.
Yeah.
Definitely not in undergrad too. And if you remember, what were the requirements to get into the MSc program?
The requirements were essentially just attaining at least a 76% average
Okay.
and an 80% in your last year or something like that.
Right.
So they weren't super strict, and there weren't any specific courses.
Okay.
One thing to mention with MSc is that you definitely should know the individual that you're applying with. A lot of the application is based on the supervisor.
Gotcha.
So if you don't have a supervisor, you probably won't be able to get into the program.
Have you thought about what the next steps are after you finish the MSc program?
Definitely. I don't know what the answer is right now because I
Yep.
feel like I don't really know what the MSc will entail.
Right.
I've always told myself that if I'm not going to go and be an MD, that I'm going to do my PhD. I love learning, and I think the more that I know, the better. And I think that if I really enjoy the MSc and the research component of it, I will probably go on and do a PhD
Right.
while also write the exam to be like a physiologist and
Right.
be licensed for that. So that's kind of where my mindset is right now. Medicine is
Right.
definitely still there, but I think it's a bit on the back burner at this moment.
Gotcha. And obviously, things happen. Life happens. I'm sure you might be at a completely different spot and when you're finished. So good to know. But just going back to that, the inspiration behind going into medicine, like where did that come from, or where did that passion come from?
It's interesting because I was just reading my diary from when I was 10 years old, and in there I wrote that I wanted to be a doctor.
Huh.
But I think a lot of it stems from seeing my parents, who are both nurses. They
Right.
work in different departments, but hearing them talk about science or helping individuals and seeing what they do on a day-to-day basis was something that I personally thought was very intriguing. And obviously taking courses that you talk about physiology and anatomy, and I was like, wow, this is mind-blowing.
Right.
So the two and two together, I kind of always wanted to do medicine.
For any of the students that are in their third and fourth year that are considering, should I do a master's? Do I want to go into med school? But I just don't have enough experience, which is a very common case for so many people.
Mhm.
What would you say? Because I know a lot of people will think, I'll just graduate and I'll get the experience later. What opportunities would you tell them to really take advantage of while you're in school?
I think it's never too late to try something, and especially with the KIN program at UBC, they've just established some new directed studies, which allow students to do some more research while they're in their undergrad.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of worry that when you're in your fourth year, you're kind of done and there's not much else. However, that's not the case. You can keep
Right.
doing whatever you want to do, including volunteering and work, even when you're done. So I think it's just being open to new opportunities and not being afraid to just go after them is what I would say in your third and fourth year.
And then can you speak to one final thing, which is, I know you said, when you were applying to med programs, there are obviously some that you didn't get into in Canada that you're potentially hoping for. When you, got the letter that said, you weren't accepted, how did you overcome that hurdle and really, focus in on getting that MSc and then, leaving these doors open in the future and not just giving up on it?
Yeah. It was really hard in the beginning. I'm not going to sugarcoat that
Yeah.
because this is something that I've worked my entire life for. But I think with time and speaking with different professors and speaking with the exercise physiologist at Children's Hospital, who really helped me understand that there is so much out there and
Right.
that you can really put your passions into very different, types of careers,
Right.
and that medicine is not the only way for me to do what I love.
Yeah.
And I think having those conversations with those people and having the support of my family altogether, I overcame that. And I was like, you know what? There are so many other things that I could do that I could love that I don't even know are out there.
For sure. I think just to expand on that, a lot of people, not only in the healthcare field, especially in the business field, where it's, I have to work for this company or I have to work in this profession or else I'm a failure. I think it's a little exaggerated, but that is really the mindset of a lot of, students. And, for anyone listening to this, when you look at that profession, that career, one part, some people end up getting it and they realize they absolutely hate it or potentially hate it down the road. It really didn't fulfill them. So it's a really good idea to figure out what your values and what your passions are. Like, what do you enjoy doing? Like, at its core, if your plan A doesn't work, how can you still fulfill those passions and values and still enjoy what you're doing, but not necessarily in that position? How can you find it in something else? And it's absolutely fantastic that you found and you research on the projects and the people you're working with. It's so interesting that you went that route. You overcame those hurdles. And honestly, it's great to hear that you have a great support system getting over that, because I know a lot of people get crushed when their plan A doesn't happen for them. And it's just a struggle to think of what's next, especially when you're graduated. You're like, you have all the people asking me,
what's next?
What's next? Like, where are you going to work? Are you going to move out soon? All those questions. But no, super inspiring story. Super excited to see where you're going to end up at. Otherwise, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.